So just a little background on this study. So this was part, and Donna Qualley and I were partners. We were fortunate, I'm going to say, to be part of a Elon writing transfer study that started back in 2011. And I think there were 42 of us, something like that. And these were people from all over the place, from states, countries, all were interested in the idea of what transfers from one site to another. So the kind of overarching theme was critical junctures. So Donna and I were partnered up under first year to upper division. What happens between first year and upper division? Some of the people were working on the juncture between school and college. Others were looking at college and the workplace. So that was sort of the overarching theme. But it was about what transfers. And of course, by the time we were done, we decided that we didn't want to use the word transfer. Once we get people together, right? So, what was I doing? Oh, I just turned it off now. See, I'm not to be trusted with this.
Okay, I'm going to do it.
I was hoping you'd ask to do that before.
How about you hand it to Wes?
No, I got it. I got it.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, here's why I was interested in it. And I think it's fair to say that if you start talking about how important is writing, it's totally clear consensus that if you say what's really important to learning well, most people will say writing because it's about thinking. So the students who were part of that Making the Most of College study that Richard Light did back in 2001, I believe it was. And I think they're representative of what our students would say too. Writing was at the top of the list. They get it, that writing well is thinking well, is learning well. However, it's really complex. It turns out to be a really complex phenomena, especially when you start moving from one disciplinary context to another. And some people would say it's a wonder that people can write at all, given how many different contexts we ask them to write in. So, in my role as the Director of Writing Instruction Support, I've been curious for a while, genuinely curious, what do people expect in terms of writing proficiency? What does it even mean? So we have this requirement, this graduation requirement at Western, but what do people mean by it across stakeholders, across levels? And then I had the opportunity with this Elon transfer study to pursue that. So that's just a little bit of the background. This was my research question, kind of a simple little question. What do you think students need to know and be able to do to be proficient academic writers? What?
Not simple.
Not that simple as it turned out. And this was the overarching question that I wanted to ask of students and faculty and, as it turned out, administrators as well. So, thanks to Donna Qualley, I had access to English 101 classes. And so a pretty hefty number, fall through spring of that year, 11 to 12, I was able to do pre and post surveys in the English 101 courses to the tune of about 2,500 students. And asked them essentially that question: what do you think you need to do to be an academically proficient writer? The English 101 instructors, the 25 who were part of the instructor cadre in the fall and then in the spring also answered the same survey. And then a sampling of some of the writing proficiency course students. So there were about 156 of those students. A sampling of WP course instructors, about 52. And they were across the colleges, so it was, a suggestive number, shall we say. It wasn't just English or humanities, whatever. And then 27 central administrators. And by central administrators, I mean deans and provosts and director types. Then in the winter of 12, we had 3 mixed focus groups. Chevelle actually helped organize those, so there were students and faculty. I don't think there were any administrators in the focus groups, as I recall. Students and faculty. About 14 across 3 mixed groups. And then in the spring, I was able to do 5 follow-up interviews, and I would love to go back and do some more interviews because those were really revealing. Based on the surveys, so I asked on the surveys, are you willing or interested in being part of a focus group or an interview? And most people said, there's actually a real interest on the part of faculty on talking about how you teach writing. I think the commitment to understanding how to do it better in the classroom it runs deep and long. People are really committed to it. So, grounded theory tried to determine from the data what it meant. And I think it's worth mentioning here that there were 8 undergraduates over the course of the 2 years as the data emerged from the surveys and the focus groups who helped me code it. And I can't tell you how fascinating that was. For them to look at the data and say, here's what we think the categories are. Out of that work came 16 categories. And I'll mention what a few of them were. But the number started at about, I think it was 39. So when students read the data, they named 39 different kinds of writing things that were expected, which was really telling. And I think one of the things it suggests is that students think writing is so many different things, it's a wonder, that you could ever learn it. So what we would see as maybe one category and see through to one category, they saw it as yet one more thing that they had to understand in order to be a proficient writer. So that was interesting. So the categories, I think you could predict some of them. Claim, thesis was important. Critical analysis or critical thinking. Critical reading. Composing process, just how to write. The use of evidence. Quality of expression, things like clarity and concision. Rhetorical knowledge, understanding the audience and the purpose. Organization, so that would include things like coherence and connections and all of that. Application to other contexts, vocabulary, both vocabulary in general as well as vocabulary about writing, style, and then conventions. Those 16 categories. So, as you might predict, a misalignment, right? I assumed there would be a misalignment. Have you had an experience where your expectations were different from? Yeah? Yeah. So I would have predicted that. However, I wasn't completely prepared for the misalignment in one way. So understand that all of those categories came up, for example, in the responses from English 101 stakeholders. But there was a clear emphasis and a privileging, if you will, on critical reading and reasoning. Which is a good thing, because the name of the course is
Writing and critical inquiry.
Right, so that's a good thing. The expectations lined up with the course. For WP course students and faculty, there was a very different privileging in terms of emphasis on claims, the use of evidence, and then I think that last one is particularly important, clarity of expression, and I'm going to say on a sentence level. So not overall discourse, but they wanted to be able to see that sentences made sense. So that kind of clarity of expression and conciseness came up a lot. Administrators, out of 27 respondents, 20 emphasized conventions. And there was absolutely no lack of clarity about what they meant by conventions. Because they said grammar, spelling came up a lot in those 20. And presentation, how you present. So big contrast there. Now what do we do with this? Okay, so what are the implications? I mean, it's tempting to say, well, I think those of us who have been involved in teaching writing for a long time would say, well, administrators, you're just wrong, right? You're just wrong to put the emphasis there. And, things like the essay, How to Say Nothing Correctly in 500 Words, some of you know that piece. It's a good reminder that we simply can't start with conventions, right? We really have to develop ideas and all of that. However, I think it's understandable why the emphasis fell where it did for the various stakeholders. It makes sense that in the first year the emphasis is going to be on thinking, critical thinking and critical reading. However, probably the problem we've got here is that we don't tell people what our expectations are always. We don't spend a lot of time making them explicit, and not just in the courses, but across. So WP faculty are not knowing enough about what the expectations are for English 101, for example, to be clear that what they're doing is building on that. It's not that they don't care about critical reading. and reasoning. But they need to say it out loud, put it on a syllabus, talk about it. So that whole thing about needing to make our expectations explicit seems to be one of the big implications of this, across levels. And I know this is something that Jeremy, you're talking about too, and Donna has made heroic efforts in trying to get those conversations going across what is our two key courses, English 101 and the writing proficiency course requirement. So more of those conversations, more of those deliberate dialogues would be helpful. The need for affordances was one of those big words we spent time with in the seminar. That simply means that we need to be tapping into the knowledge and skills that students have learned to acquire in the preceding place. Otherwise, they don't continue developing them. And sometimes don't even know they have them. So again, knowing what's happening in English 101 and being able to talk about those allows WP course faculty who will give those affordances. I think that's another part of the value of having a dialogue. The last thing, and there was a lot of enthusiasm for this in the seminar, the transfer seminar itself. A lot of people there said, you know, we don't have a shared lexicon in our institution to talk about writing. And so a group of us, and some of them are in the room here, and I have a copy for you, it's a gift for coming today, it will change your life, is a copy of a shared lexicon that we came up with over the course of a number of conversations. Some of the language comes from English 101, and the idea is that we're trying to get it out whenever we can. So if you can talk about writing in these terms in various contexts, that maybe, just maybe, students will begin to hear some repeating things so that they don't think it's just, what does she want? You know, what does he want? But that there really are some features, if you will, that do go across context. So, I think Chevelle put a little, I want to thank, as I'm not sure I did sufficiently, but Donna was extremely helpful. She also did a study that's a fascinating study of the role of the graduate teaching assistants in instruction and what that means. And both of our studies are coming out. There are a couple of volumes coming out as a result of the Elon transfer study. And the writing proficiency course instructors, all of the writing instruction colleagues at Western, I really would like to emphasize how much they care about writing. I think it's easy sometimes to think that, well, if they just cared more, you know, what a wonderful word it would be. But I do think that there are a lot of people on this campus who care a lot about it. And then, of course, students who have a kind of painful way of letting us know sometimes what we're doing wrong. So, questions? We have just a couple minutes. Do you have any questions about this study? It was fun.
Carmen, are you thinking about doing any follow-up?
To the study?
Yeah.
Well, I thought it, like I said earlier,
Interviews.
I would love to continue the interviews. I think they were particularly revealing. They were world enough and time enough.
Yeah.
Maybe.
What relationship did you see between the surveys and then that entry and exit writing that's not the writing thing? Or I guess the surveys and the interviews is what I mean.
The relationship between
The surveys and the interviews?
Well, I think one of the things that happens, so for example, I think about, pass this to you before I do something bad. One faculty member that I interviewed talked about how I just want students to know basic skills, and then she proceeded to talk about what she meant. I was going to hear, I thought, conventions, but she went on to talk about the importance of an emerging overall idea, okay? The use of evidence. She actually went on to talk about everything. I would not have known that from the survey. That's why I think it would be really helpful to do some more of the interviews to find out, a bit in the way that Tyson Zawacki did when they interviewed faculty more deeply about their assignments, is to talk about what do they mean about their expectations. Because I think that would be useful to them if they could refine the language they use, because if they say to students, I just want you to learn basic skills, and that's going to carry, that's a problem. So there, it was deepening of what the language was.
All right, well, I'm Wes Keister. Thank you for being here. So I had an independent study over this winter studying WID and WAC at large, but specifically focusing in on Western, doing survey and follow-up interviews. So I'm going to mostly focus on that aspect today. Clicker working. So I teach English 101 and only English 101 at Western. And I also think I am in the 101 program. That's how I think of myself. And we teach and are taught a particular style of essay in this program. And thank God that I'm in this program because I needed that support and shared colleague experiences and training. And we haven't tried to teach every kind of genre. My experience, but it made me think, well, what else is going on around the university? Are a lot of research papers demanding more of a direct style? What place does the evolving thesis have? Another motivation, looking at writing proficiency courses and talking to Carmen. There's a lot of difference and uncertainty in just what's going on. What is the instruction? What are the assignments? What are the obstacles for writing proficiency courses? And we really didn't and still don't know in many ways, so I tried to fill that gap in a small way, a much smaller study than Carmen and Donna's, but one more nugget of information, I suppose. Looking at what faculty members assign, how they respond to student writing, and mostly giving today what the obstacles they face, or consider what they face, what obstacles they perceive to face in regard to student writing in their WP courses. So just a little bit of format, sent out a structured survey to all of the WP faculty members. I got an over 25% response rate, which is pretty high for a non-compensated, non-mandatory survey. So maybe that speaks to the interest that they had in this subject. Some of the main questions: what genres do you frequently assign? Describe a low-stakes writing assignment or exercise. What are common ways writing instruction takes place in your course or courses? Some faculty members taught multiple WP courses. And what I'll go into a little bit here, what writing skills you want your students to acquire or sharpen by your courses end. So here are some trends, or at least the results for that question. And a little note on SurveyMonkey here, I had them select their top 3 choices, but there was a little hitch in that they could select more through the platform, and 6 of them selected all of them. So,